This is my scrap wood pedal board. I built this for blues jams and small gigs where I didn't want to take my larger board. Now I could have bought a cheap board on Amazon, but I wanted to work on some woodcraft and I had the wood laying around the house, so I figured why not give it a shot. So this isn't really a how-to guide on how to build a pedal board. It's just what I did and what I filmed on how I built it with the tools that I had around the house.
I got a new angle jig that I wanted to try out. And since I want to continue making pedal boards, I figured I'd practice on some scrap wood here. Now I've only used my table saw a handful of times, so I'm still trying to get used to it. Now I made lots and lots of cuts. At least 5 different passes to try and get 2 angled pieces to actually work. I never quite got them to where I wanted them to be, so I had to do some finagling to get all of the pieces to fit correctly, and a couple of more different passes. But I'll spare you with all those and just show you the first one. Once I had the angle pieces cut, now I was just cutting everything down to size. I used my chop saw here to do that, and these pieces that I'm cutting eventually would become what is the long section of the pedal board. So from here I realized I needed the pieces to be about 2 inches wide, maybe a little wider than that to go across the top. So I pulled out the table saw again to make these rip cuts. And then just pushed these through and I got 4 pieces to make this all work on the pedal board. Now that all the pieces are cut, it was time to assemble the pedal board. I used these angle brackets that I got at Home Depot to put the pedal board together. They're pretty easy and it makes the pedal board really, really strong. I also experimented with some dowel joinery. It didn't go as well as I had hoped, but it was my first time trying. As you can see, I had to put the holes all the way through, but I did get them to fit. I still used the black brackets to make sure everything stayed together, but it was a good test and a good practice for future runs. One thing I've learned from all of my other wood projects is to always drill pilot holes. I learned the hard way by just running screws into some wood and splitting a few pieces that I had to then go back and recut. So always putting pilot holes in, no matter where you are, will save you a lot of headache in the future. And that's what I'm doing here. Here you can see the underside of the pedal board with all the brackets installed. It's pretty strong and pretty sturdy, so I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. Now the board is roughly assembled. I have a couple gaps and a couple things that I want to fix and straighten up, and it needs lots of sanding because it's still pretty rough. I spared you the video of me sanding this thing, but I used the 60 grit at first to get down all of the rough edges, and then I went back over it a couple more times with a 220 to smooth it out. And I could probably hit it one more time with a 400, but I was going to sand it again once I put some lacquer on it. I didn't realize that I didn't have my camera running when I stained this board. But I did 2 coats of a brown stain that I had. I also got that from Home Depot, and then 2 more coats of a semi-gloss polyurethane on it to get it somewhat shiny, but mostly to make sure it survives being thrown in bags and being tossed around. But all in all, it came out pretty well so far. I've added some Home Depot Velcro to the board so I can stick my pedals to it. In the future, I plan on adding a dedicated isolated power supply as well, but for now, since I'm going to be pulling pedals on and off and I don't know what's going to be permanent on this board, I just left it this way and I'll just use a 1 spot or something else until I figure out what I really want to do. And that's it. So hopefully someone gets some ideas or inspiration out of this. Thanks a lot.